Hey, what's up, people? This is episode 56 of the Option Podcast. This episode is brought to you by NY Varsity Sports. That's me. That's me, the NYV. Watching me, watching you. Episode 56, people. I got Wendy Jones, and the episode starts right now. What's good, people? This is episode 56 of the Option Podcast. You ask and I deliver, because sometimes I have some first-time guests and sometimes I have some revolving guests because we can't get enough of them. And on my end, I've got to give the people what they want. Dun, 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 dun. Wendy Jones, what is good?
Oh, I've already been out on the beach today. Saw you this morning. I love that we're creatures of habit, so I know where to find you in the mornings
I
and
know,
night.
sun worshiper. Sun
So
worshiper.
great to be here, though. I always love talking to you.
Yep. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to avoid enjoying hearing the sound of my own voice. We had this conversation about sun worshiping and like the realtor showing you the house certain hours of the day where it's not freezing at night or when the sun's not beaming down on you. But all that glitters not gold is for another podcast. This podcast, I want to talk about your journal. For those of you listening at home, and for those of you that haven't seen previous episodes with Wendy Jones. Wendy Jones is of the founder, creator of the Optimist Journal. Give everyone a brief synopsis on what that is, and I want to get into your most recent blog.
Well, I started the Optimist Journal a couple years ago. It's been a work in progress, and it ebbs and flows, but my point is to always spread optimism, because I do see my perspective in the world as one that always sees silver linings and the struggles that inevitably cross all of our paths. So I am a storyteller that likes to weave the stories of my own life, as we build our own self-awareness, and I think that people learn through stories. And so I try to share mine in an attempt to help people be brave enough to share their own stories. And as we do that, we work through, so many things that cross our path. And so, I use it as a storytelling platform, as a way to spread my perspective in the world. And that's just one that I want to bring, calm and connection to people as we have these discussions, whether it's sports, mindfulness, wellness, public policy. This is why I love your podcast, Jason, because you touch on all the same stuff that, really, I think, makes a difference in the world.
Yeah, we're definitely we might get in a little bit of how some of the feedback I've been getting on my podcast and certain things that I do it for the people. I got to listen to the people, and there's always to me there's always more than one way to skin a cat, and there's if I do it too much someone else's way, then the product is tainted, and me who promises to be real and honest or whatever kind of takes a curveball. You don't strike out, but you start missing a curveball sooner or later. You're gonna strike out. So if I can't do this and be me, then there's no point. The whole purpose is to provoke thought, constantly raise the question, not for me to spoon feed you answers, not for you to have received opinions. God knows, I speak for both of us where we, as far as the received opinions are concerned, they can get that. They can get that any. They don't have to come here for that. You want to be real. You want to hear the truth. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's just honest, and sometimes, in your case, it's life saving. This is where you want to be. And I promise I'm gonna let this girl talk, and somewhere in the middle I'll talk about how she's dramatically helped my perspective. But I'd like to start present tense, your most recent blog, okay? And I'd like to start with the first paragraph, paraphrasing but reading a little bit, all right? 2020 has brought a lot of pain to the surface. We have so much to wrestle with on a daily basis, and national dialogue feels fractured, contentious, and highly activated. This week alone, I've been moved to tears by the emotion that comes every year with what 9/11 has to offer. Of course, let's dissect this a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about your sentiment about 9/11 and every year. what it means to you and how it comes around.
Well, I mean, even just that statement gives me chills because I think, first and foremost, we're all Americans, and I don't think in our lifetime there's been a more unifying day in the midst of the greatest tragedy that we've ever seen. No American will ever forget where they were standing that day when they realized the attack that we were under. And I made a post on 9/11, as so many people did, just to honor, the lives that were lost and where we were that day. But my post centered on the way that we felt on 9/12, because we were a unified America. And it didn't feel like we were a unified America because we were scared. It felt like, oh no, you're not going to get the best of us. And I don't know if you've seen the play Come From Away. They turned it into,
Yeah,
the Broadway. It's
I saw it.
fantastic. Oh,
Kelly,
it was
Kelly took me. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's so great, right? And that feeling that we had that day that brought us all together, I want to feel that again. And right now, there's just more fear in the air, and you think about how scary that day was versus what we're facing like little by little every day now. But there's a feeling of being pulled apart, and I feel like so much of our perspective comes from the pain that we experience in life, and it comes from the joy too. But the way that we process our pain is just so important. And we need to come together and realize like everybody has a different pain point, right? So 9/11 was a day that we all felt the same pain and we all came together. But now, we have so many issues that are tugging at our heart. And I kind of went on, thinking about 9/11 and then going on to, the racial tensions that we're feeling, the wildfire and the environmental debate. And there are just so many things that are tugging at our hearts. But how can we come together and see that we're all shaped by the same forces, but we're going to have different perspectives? And I want to come back to feeling that the way we felt on 9/12 and how it wasn't fractured. And there was a greater purpose of being a unified front, and it's hard to feel that today. And I want to feel that. And I do feel it one-on-one when you talk with people, you get, you have those conversations, Jason, like you and I have when we run into each other on the street, and you make those connections one by one. But it feels like when we get to the world of social media and, when we're taking in that morning news, it feels very one-sided, or like we are afraid to say that, there could be a little bit of truth in both sides of the story, because we don't always have to be right. We need to be here to learn and take in the other side of the story. Like I'm very, very careful about the news I do take in. I want that dialogue from maybe the opposing opinion, which I think you have to actively seek that out these days. Because when you watch how social media will lead us, it will lead us down the rabbit hole of people who believe the same things that we do. And you really have to make an attempt to go the other direction and take in that other side so that maybe you can learn something and not be threatened by it.
I think it's the threat itself that makes people feel uncomfortable. I had a metaphor in comparison, and that I've only talked to people in private, but I'd like to use it now. 9/11 was lightning in a bottle. 9/11 was getting struck by lightning. What's been happening pretty much just use 2020, because otherwise the sample size would be too big and we can't dissect it. And I think the year 2020 is already too big. 9/11 was getting struck by lightning. 2020's death of 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
So
Great metaphor.
if you're struck by lightning, and for those that missed, and for those that rally around each other because you realize that could have been you, and the 9/11 was and not an attack on people. And people need to be very careful. It wasn't about our Judeo-Christian way of life. It was on our way of life, and it's very important that people know that People that worked in the World Trade Center were Muslim. People that worked in the World Trade Center were Jewish. People that worked in the World Trade Center were Christians, were Orthodox, born again, whatever, Jews for Jesus. People that worked in the World Trade Center are atheists. I mean, they're not even in this gangster shit, this religious stuff. Port Authority police were also all of the above. Firefighters were also all of the above. I mean, predominantly Irish, so you're going to assume Catholic if it's Irish, because that's how stereotypes work. All of the above. Port Authority, NYPD was all of the above. So people have to understand, united meant united against a group of people that were trying to tear down our way of life. It was George Bush was the only. I mean, the 9/12. You want to talk about 9/12 and unity? It made it all the way up to the office. It was the highest presidential approval rating. I gotta go back, guys. But as far as stats is concerned, he's got to be. It had to be the best, the highest in 30 years. Democrat or Republican, because of the speech and the level of importance. Which, no matter who you voted for, you have to know that came from a real and honest place. Nobody, no matter what your policies are, no president wants 9/11 on their watch. Okay, nobody wants that. So, 9/12 was very, very important. And I'm comparing this to 2029. What happens after that is the test of men. Wendy, is the true test of men and women. 9/11. There was a big argument in the newspaper. I'm from New York. A big argument in the newspaper. They wanted to build a mosque 3 blocks away from the World Trade Center. And everybody's like, oh, that's so insensitive. Oh, that's so divisive. And that's so this, that's so that. And for the first time in my life, I kept my opinion to myself, because I just kept hearing all of this, whatever, this bigoted rhetoric. And they're like, okay, Jason, you're awfully quiet. Go ahead, And I'm like, I think it's a great idea. And they're just like, oh my God, this guy lost his mind. I said, I think it's a great idea. I said, if you want to show the world that you cannot beat us, if you want to show the world that you cannot defeat us, if you want to show the world that we are united as one true front, that you're using Muslim terrorists as a fear for us to fear Muslims everywhere, to show you that we win and you lose, build a mosque. Build a mosque. This is who we are. And no one understood that. And even now, this is decades later. Wendy, they'll still disagree with me. They just don't get it. They don't get it. And there's a united front, like you said, that comes from an attack that was indiscriminate of your race and whether you're a woman or whether you have an Optimist Journal or a podcast or you are a Muslim or black guy, or short white guy or fat or skinny. And that's the difference, I think, between 9/11 and everything that's been happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you hit on I think I said this in my blog, as long as people, 9/11 was an attack on physical and emotional safety, right? And so, once you get outside of those things, people have the ability to believe differently and share a perspective that might not be yours, but you can develop some compassion for where someone might be coming from. But when you take away someone's physical or emotional safety, that's where you start to get those opinions like, oh, we couldn't possibly have a mosque near the World Trade Center site. When really, if you look at the fabric of America, we have to be built on continual improvement. I mean, there's no perfect track record here, but we're so diverse, we're so different, and we have to find a way to keep perfecting that diversity, and keep seeing each other as human before we see each other as these, segmented areas of society, whether it's, socioeconomic or political or racial or, woman, man, all of these things that we try to divide ourselves by and not see like the humanity that is behind every single one of our stories.
Yeah. And I like the journal because you did a huge job of making a balloon emphasis on the positiveness, because it's very, very easy to just let negatives. It's in our human nature to let negativity seep into our head. Wendy, you can play a volleyball game. You get 19 kills, right? And then you could hit one ball where your hand follows through on the net and almost takes down the net system, net violation.
Yeah.
It is in our minds to only remember the hitting error. You know what I'm saying? 19 for 20. I mean, I'm not being
Yeah,
realistic
no,
here, but
the
19 for 20
negativity
is an
bias.
awesome number.
Yeah, it's a real thing. The negativity bias is a real thing.
No, and the reason why I like your journal in general is because you don't do you acknowledge that negative is there, but you acknowledge that there's a scale to these things, and people need to pay attention to the big scheme of things, because you believe that more unites us than divides us. And as long as you're willing to believe that, and as long as some people are willing to at least try that, you're going to find more negative than positive than negative. You're going to find ways to be like, hey, this is a small instance, and maybe there's some things we agree and disagree on, but it shouldn't shut down everything else that we can agree and work together on. Beautiful thing about the firefighters, the comparison about the firefighters with the wildfires going on right now.
Oh,
And the incredible bravery of firefighters doing real work to save lives and structures shows that there are real heroes in the world. But then we turn to face racial tensions in our country that, although I will never feel the pain firsthand, I want to be a part of the solution that moves us forward to a place that America has never been. And I'm sure that in my heart we can go.
You definitely want to keep seeing the progression in that discussion. You don't want it to be. I remember sitting here, right after in the first the riots that hit this summer, and going, don't let this be a couple days that people feel like they're going to hunker down and survive, and this is all going to go on in the streets, and then a few weeks later we're just going to go back to life as we knew it. And to have the racial tension erupt and then go back down, what it needs to be a continual discussion. And it's feeling more like everyday Americans are making it a daily discussion. And if we can keep moving forward, and from my perspective, as a white woman, it's my turn to sit back and listen if we want to move this forward. Now, I'll do things in my daily life. I mean, I have friends of all different races. I have an 18-year-old son. The first thing I think of is if my 18-year-old son were Black, I would have a lot different worries when he's out at 1 o'clock in the morning versus what I worry about when my 18-year-old son is out at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And just acknowledging that your reality is different than somebody else's allows you to just sit down, calm, and listen to the perspective that, like I say, I will never know firsthand what that feels like, but we have to feel safe enough to sit back and let other people talk.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not in the driver's seat on that discussion, but except to just teach my kids and teach and act myself to just treat everybody with the ultimate decency and human respect that everyone deserves.
Very well said. You're not in the driver's seat, but you're at least allowing yourself to be a passenger.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for everyone listening, Wendy's basically talking about what the emphasis on what white privilege really is. There's through our media, both all the way to the left and all the way to the right, there are common denominator guidelines that are set that people believe in to be true and sometimes are not. There are a lot of people, and for everyone listening, take this in and agree or disagree. White privilege to them is an insult because it's suggesting that they didn't work hard to get what they got, and the misconception or the missed definition of what they think white privilege is connected to hard work. And when someone takes exception that you have a privilege, it's in someone's nature to say, hey, screw you. What do you mean I didn't work hard? I've worked for every freaking penny I got, and I think if they think that's what white privilege means, Of course there's going to be blowback. And what you just said really defines the common denominator. There's what's accepted as true, and there's what's real. There are things that are facts, but then there's things that are real. And it's crazy because everyone thinks facts are real. No, facts are not real if they're not logically connected. If you accept something as a definition and you're going on that fact, then it's not real. So very, very, very good emphasis on what white privilege, what everyone's really talking about here.
Yeah, and
Please.
to me, what it comes down to so often, like between human connection, what is real is the empathy that we feel for somebody else's position rather than thinking of ourselves first. And if we're able to, have some empathy for where someone else is coming, whether your subject is racism, and that's why I go on my blog to say, my life has been shaped by other points of pain and also other joys, but I can talk about, autism or feeling ostracized because, I have a son that's on the autism spectrum, and what that feels like to have, when someone treats you or you worse, when you see your child treated unfairly, or, someone's mean or combative. And, but in my life, it's a one-off. It's not a generation after generation after generation. And I know what it feels like to be ostracized on a one-off. So if you think about what that does psychologically to an entire culture that hasn't felt safe for generations, that to me is where, my empathetic heart kicks in huge, because the one-off is painful. Mm-hmm. So what do you do when it's been when you factor it in generation after generation?
Yeah,
that's going to have a huge impact on culture and the way that society, or the way that culture has come up, because you can't leave people feeling unsafe for too long before you're going to see the side effects of the pain that they feel.
Yeah. Something else, giving a whole bunch of teasers on your blog, on your most recent blog. Is it possible that there is both need for better forest management and that global warming exists and contributions to the increased fire risk? People live in these false dichotomies where it's either one or the other. And sometimes in a debate, one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not, thou shalt not limit the argument to only two choices when there's more than two choices, mm-hmm. right? In this case, what I just said, it could be both. It could be both. In some cases outside of what we just talked about, it could be neither. So, and it says, can you be utterly outraged? And this is important for everyone listening, and I'm not talking about me. This is her blog, so bear with me. Can you be utterly outraged and sickened by racism and police brutality and still support honorable law enforcement? Can you eat vegan? This is my favorite. Can you eat vegan while your neighbor looks for something to barbecue and still find connection around the dinner table? Can you believe that there are ways to support the immune-compromised community in the face of global pandemic and still embrace the idea of individual freedom, deep health, and people's need to provide for their families and commit to their work? Or at the very least, can you understand that someone has a right and reason to see an issue from a different lens than your own without stomping out their humanity? And we have to get rid of false dichotomies. We're here to pose the question, but posing the question and answering these questions, at some point, viable solutions come. Right? You just posed 4 questions, and one, all of it is under the general blanking of getting rid of saying you only have 2 choices here. You're either with me or against me. You're either this or that, and that's not always true. That's we're knocking out common denominators today. Today is our mission. We're knocking out common denominators that are accepted as I guess fact or truth. And this is not. This is a common denominator we have to knock out. You can. Yeah. Wendy, I'm going to give you the floor, but I want to say this one thing. When has having a problem with police misconduct automatically mean you're anti-police? Are we 12? Floor is yours.
I mean, I think it goes back to the principle that you said. I truly do believe, there are more good guys than bad guys out there, and I believe that in the police brutality debate. I believe that in society at large, and in these instances, there's so many that. I mean, you can look at what just happened in Compton the other night, and it scares me to think that that's the state of society these days. That, like, you can have officers are getting ambushed too. Well, that officer is, someone's husband or someone's father or someone's mother. I mean, the risk that those people take walking out the door every day, that there are bad things that go out there, and that it is their job to protect. So, while there have absolutely been the instances that we have been outraged by they're sickening. There's nothing that makes it okay, and that we absolutely 100%, I believe, have a problem with race and violence against the African American community, and not one of those instances is tolerable. But neither is the ambush that went on in Compton the other night. And this is where I do get, I don't want to say nervous, but for lack of a better word, nervous about what we take in the media, and the lack of that story. Had what happened in Compton the other night, if that had gone on, if you reverse the roles, and that was police attacking and a black man dying,
Someone that's unarmed.
Which, again, no, either way, not okay. But the place that story against those police officers took in the news, you had to look for that story. That was not front and center news in the LA Times. It was a little column, a smaller article towards the bottom of the page. And
that's the kind of news that should be at the top of the page, because we're talking about real news here. We're talking about real journalism. Here's a video, anything that that can help us find this person, that should have been the headline. We interrupt every single show. We're looking for this person. That shouldn't have been page 6.
Yeah, and wrong is wrong. I mean, I don't want to see, racial bias or political bias, framing these stories. And if there's I watched a documentary the other night. I don't mean to segue, but it's called The Social Dilemma on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on Netflix, and it's frightening because it goes through, and I'm not one to get scared about society as a whole. Like I say, I always believe that we're coming back, and we're coming back stronger. But this concept of the way that news is being delivered to us to polarize our society, the way that we can go down the rabbit hole, the way that, liberal news is fed one way and conservative news is fed the other, and false news, there's so much, fake news out there, and who's giving it, and we all have a platform to talk. So who's talking? Do we check our sources? What's the difference between what we're getting from Facebook and, what we get in the hard news in the New York Times and an LA Times? Is there, all of those stories, we can take in a lot, and there's just a lot out there that is making us not see, we're only seeing our own point of view. We're being fed one way. I can Google something down here in LA. I can Google the exact same thing, and I'm going to get a different response based on being where I am, versus if I went home to Fresno and I Googled it there, because they are watching to see what is the mentality, what is the belief system around you, and they're feeding you that news. And I want to know what the other side is. I know what I think. I always want to hear the other side of the story. And when I have these conversations, whether it's about masks or, racial tensions or environmental policy, I think if you have a short conversation with me, you won't know where I land, where I stand on that issue, because I'm going to sit back and listen first. And so if you get me into a longer policy debate, you'll find out what I think. But I always want to sit back and listen and learn something before I say, this is what I think. But at the same time, and you were really good to say this to me the other day, Jason, is, you don't let yourself get gaslit into silence. And I think for a long time, like when I took this break from politics, because I grew up in a very political family, I took this break like it was a cleanse. But then I realized, like, if the informed people with good hearts aren't speaking up, then who's winning the battle, right? So I have a right to my opinion just as much as you have a right to yours. And I applaud people who use intelligent voice to speak their mind, regardless of what their position is, because we absolutely, this is the fundamental, that is what is so fundamental about being an American, that and actually going to vote. Like, yeah. I do think there are a lot of people out there that are talking today that I hope they're registered. And again, I don't care what you think, but show up at the ballot box. That's what I was raised on. Mm-hmm. So, and if you don't show up, then you're just creating noise.
Yeah. Jesse Ventura, if you don't vote, don't bitch. Yeah. As far as people not thinking their vote counts, I mean, we're not talking about presidential elections here. We're talking about winning battles on a smaller scale. Your city council person, your town mayor, your sitting senators, state senators, federal Congress people, because real change, and this is important, and this is close to fact, as my opinion is going to be, real change has never really happened that affects us, everyday people, has never really happened on a presidential level. It just doesn't. In your lifetime, you're not going to have a president who has a policy that affects you directly. There might be a segue that leads to other things where years down the line, okay, I get that. But only one president has really done something that affects me, okay? I mean, they're going to do plenty of things that affect the wealthy. They're going to do plenty of things that may or may not help people that have like no money. But the people who are the working poor, the people who are the working class, the people who are the middle class, this large percentage of people in between, they haven't changed your bottom line. Local government is where change has come. So for the people voting for president, if you're just saddened by what 2020 has to offer, and if you're like, I'm not going to vote, then fine, don't vote for president, but don't not vote. Don't not vote. I understand people. The question is, Biden, who's going into November on a dementia drumstick, is he still going to be better than what we have now? That's the question. That's me being real. I'm being real. You got this guy who could be a year and a half from knocking us back into the Middle Ages, and you have another guy that I think a month from now is not even going to know he's running or who he's running against. Okay, so I mean, I'm being negative about both of them, even though there are positive things about both of them too, which we have. I mean, depending on what side of the alley you are, you'd really have to look for. But I want to say something that's going to give you the floor, because we're knocking out common denominators and common denominator beliefs. Here's the problem we have. We were talking about police brutality. We're talking about African Americans getting shot in the back unarmed and this and that. One of the biggest peeves I have right now is, in almost every single case, the people who automatically side with the police because they're, again, the false dichotomy is you're either with the police all the way or you're with the black man all the way. And it's so weird that people all those people in the middle are either, like you said, gaslit in the silence, which is the majority of America.
Right.
And then these people that are just fishing for more souls to get rid of the middle. All right. So biggest problem I have is they spend time examining the history of the person who got shot. Oh, well, he was, he has a conviction for domestic abuse. So, oh, he has this. And I'm like, did he get shot beating his wife? No, did that happen like 5 years ago? And, do you know the case? Did she punch him in the face 5 times? Did he punch her back once and go to jail? So, I mean, and is the penalty for those things death? Selling Lucy cigarettes. We call New York, we call them Lucy's. I don't know if you know what a Lucy is. A Lucy is someone, listen, a Lucy, this is poor people stuff. All right, you smoke, you like to smoke, but you can't afford the pack. So instead of spending all this money on a pack, the guy sells you 50 cents for a cigarette. Those are loosies for people that can't afford packs. That's what a loosies are. So education. I would like, and bear with me on this. My mother is African American, and I posted this, and I'm going to post this later. My mom's African American, brutalized by the police, arrested for not producing ID as a passenger. What's her history? Single mom, put herself through college, put herself through law school, worked at Paul Weiss for 35 years. My uncle was in an interrogation room for 23 hours for the police to trying to coerce a confession for a crime he didn't commit. What's his history? 25 plus years in the service and a retired master sergeant with 2 war campaigns under his whatever. My grandmother got arrested in Astoria, Queens for planting tomatoes in a tomato garden in the ghetto and in the Astoria projects. What's her history? An upstanding member of the community that generated the attention of many well-known politicians. When she died, 3 sitting senators, 3 council people, and a sitting congressperson went to her funeral. I mean, that's how big she was. My uncle, another uncle, was shot in the head by the police. Okay, and in a confusion, he was being robbed, and then he got the gun, and when the police came, they shot him. What's his past history? He doesn't have one. He was 16 years old when he got shot in the head. Now I was 9 years old, so when he got shot in the head. Now, for everyone listening, I'm not some white privileged guy who's like, oh, I have a white friend whose father, this happened to them. I have a white friend of a friend of a friend. I am giving you 4 examples of direct kinship of people who were brutalized, if not murdered by the police, whose past history is not only not bad, but commendable to a point where you want to be, I mean, me and my mom, we don't talk, but trust me, I want to be my mom. Okay? 25 years in the service, honorable service, I want to be my uncle. My grandma, who constantly goes to the campaign offices and what's going on with what's going on with the rentals, what's going on with the housing, affordable housing, calling these senators every day, being a pain in the ass. These are people you want to be. So I really, and the floor is yours because I wanted to set up a segue of knocking out common denominators. Yeah. I really think we should spend less time about examining the past of the victim, because you're suggesting that, a cop knows a murderer when they see one, or someone worth shooting when they see one for non-murder crimes. Only George Floyd, in all of those cases, only George Floyd is the only time we've spent time examining the criminal record of the cop. Oh, and well, 18 complaints, and this guy still had an office. 18 complaints of misconduct, and still had a job. So,
and to me, that's just it's that knee-jerk reaction of people wanting to cover for their own, right? Instead of looking at what is right and wrong. Like we shouldn't be covering for a certain segment of society. Like we shouldn't just be protecting people who are like us. So whether that's the police union protecting a bad cop, or whether that's, me saying, my kid would never do that, so don't ever call him out, because like, you don't ever say, not my kid. You don't ever say, not that guy. You have to look at, the society as a whole. You cannot only protect your own. You have to protect your fellow man. And I don't care what they look like, But when you were, where did you go with that?
There was so much. Basically, it was just common denominator about.
When I hear those stories of, the people in your family, like that is what I'm talking about when I say, what are you going to do with your pain? What are you going to do if the examples of the people in your family that you just gave, those are people who had definitely had massive pain points in their life. But what did they do? They got stronger and they did the right thing because they had to face that pain and they made the right choice. And when we don't face our pain, when we don't tell our story, when we get buried under the shame of, one bad action, we've all made stupid choices in our lives. You do not get to define a life by one bad choice. And there are consequences to our bad choices, there are, you might, whether it's you're going to serve some time, or you're going to, lose a friendship, or lose a relationship, or lose a marriage, or there are consequences to actions. But when, going back to the police brutality, I know stories in my own life where if the person who was involved in the scuffle outside the bar was Black versus white, that story would end up completely differently. Like, Jason, you've been on the pier in Hermosa at 1:00 in the morning. Stuff goes on,
Yep.
right? I mean, you've seen people get pulled out of bars. You've seen people get into fights, and down there, it's nonsense. But do we feel unsafe?
No.
Not usually, right? No. But when someone gets, someone gets into a scuffle down there, and it's usually in this community a white person, like, they're not facing the same throwdown that would happen if that person was Black. Like, if you get in a scuffle with the police, you might get thrown in jail. People buy their way out. The consequences are not the same. The action can be the same, and the consequences are not. And if I didn't know that firsthand, it's not okay. But it is, the point is what we do with the pain in our life, and how we let that shape our perspective, and how we let that either grow into passion and hard work, and the way that we show up a little stronger and grittier and more resilient, versus letting ourselves sink into that place where we feel sorry for ourselves. We get a victim mentality. We're looking to point the finger at somebody else, instead of saying, like, how do I take the ownership of my life, and maybe this one bad decision that I made, and go, that decision's not going to define me. I'm just going to get better. I'm going to get stronger, because we're all human. Everybody makes mistakes.
The reason why I'm a big fan of yours is because the four examples I just gave you of four people that don't have a past history that happened to them, was, I guess it was partially to prove a point, but I never really talk about that much. And I talked about it a little bit when you were on my podcast the last time. And the reason why I haven't mentioned that to a lot of people is because I didn't think that the four examples of the stories that I just told you can move some people towards understanding or whatever. They're just like, oh, okay, so, it is what it is. And now I guess the question is, as far as the common denominator we're attacking right now, examining the victims, the past record. Do stories like this, not just me, I'm not trying to make this about me, I swear to you I'm not, all of you listening, but do stories like this, like the stories that I told, is it important to share some of these stories, and what degree do you think does it help reach out to some people?
I mean, these are the stories, like, if I could, there's so many untold stories in this world, and the stories of the common man that don't get told, that are what the fabric of this country are made up of, right?
Amen.
I mean, and why I love, like, this industry of podcasting that has come up, and the stories that you get on these podcasts, they're not the stories we're hearing in the news. The stories I want to tell on my blog, the story of, I think part of seeing the humanity is like just walking down the street and looking someone in the eye and smiling at them, or whether, and I try to read that these days with the mask on my face. I want to look in someone's eyes and feel like I know them. And that is something that, we cannot lose in the face of social media and, like, just the noise out there. It's that human to human connection that's going to save us.
Don't the eyes tell so much?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I could tell someone smiling at me with a mask on. How cool is that?
I agree. Oh, I'm looking for it these days, because that is something, like, having, it takes me back to when I worry about the kids that are, just the little kids that have been living in this pandemic that haven't seen facial expressions. Like, when my son was young, the therapists were telling us, like, overemphasize your facial expressions, because that's what's going to help him start to read the room and understand what's going on. And you have to, like, play into that, and he's got to feel it. So if it's going to take a little more to feel it, you got to overemphasize those facial expressions. And so part of, people that I know that are having babies right now, when that little baby is all they've seen is a messed up face for, it's going to change brain connections, and I'm not saying that we don't have to worry about pandemic and people getting sick and people dying, but we also got to worry about mental health. And my life's been shaped, in some through an autism mom lens. And so the things that hit me, other people don't know. So, listen to where someone's coming from, because there are so many little points that are going into these huge arguments, whether it's wear a mask or, how do we take care of ourselves better to, build up our immune systems and not get sick. Even knowing that there are lots of people out there with, health issues that are putting them in a compromised position. But there's just so many things. There's always so many little points of understanding in every story. We have to slow down and listen to them.
Yeah.
It can't be some one little soundbite.
No, definitely. Before we go into that, I wanted to go back a little bit and just commend like we live in this bubble, Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, and like you were talking about an element of safety, like at no time, no matter what happens, someone gets drunk, if they're a lover, they think they're Elvis. If they're a fighter, they think they're John Jones, okay, or Mike Tyson. I do want to spend this time to commend the Hermosa Beach Police Department, and I don't know the Manhattan Beach or Redondo Police. I don't know the departments or whatever. I can only speak to my own, but I want to convey the profound respect I have of the level of policing that they do. And getting to know people by first names, being community servants, just out there in the mix and not looking like sentries, not looking. No, I mean, you see a cop, you're not looking like, wait, let me make sure I'm not, I'm not driving with a phone in my hand or whatever. I mean, when you see these cops, you don't think of that. You're like, okay, that's this guy. So, I'm not saying that they're the products of their environment, but I think they maintain and help create and recreate this environment where protect and serve and good policing should be demonstrated everywhere. I mean, I grew up wanting to be a cop, and then I had a love-hate relationship for four good reasons I just told you. My four relatives, by the way, African American. For people that are worried about skin color, a hell of a lot darker than me. But I want to commend the police department in Hermosa Beach, and I think the policing that they do should be the measuring stick on how the police department should compare themselves. So you want to talk about, not all police are bad, there's some good police. Oh, hell yeah, I know that. And I start right here where I live. It is a privilege. I do enjoy this privilege of being in this bubble, in this surroundings where bad police could go another way. So everyone's like, they're just doing their job. And I said, no, it's not their job to care. It's their job to police. There's a level of caring that comes with that. And that's the point I was trying to make. Well, but I wanted to go back to that before we moved on. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. And I would agree with you. I support our local police completely.
Yeah. Are you Manhattan Beach or Hermosa?
Well, actually, I'm in Redondo now. I was in Hermosa for a long time, and now I moved a little quieter side of town.
Oh man, good for you.
But you get back to that issue of safety, right? I mean, and it's not just the police feeling safe to do their job. It's when we get to, we're very privileged to live where we live. And we don't deal with a lot of the things that people deal with. I grew up in Fresno. I mean, it's a perfect example of a community of haves and have-nots. And while you can't have guilt, and I've wrestled with this on a personal basis, you can't have guilt for, where you were born, if you have been born into that position of privilege, or it's your job to take whatever you have and do the best with it that you can do, right? Leave places better than you found them, find that way that you can use your gifts, talents, and help, be of service. So when we are of service, our life becomes so much more joyful, so much more connected with other people. But, in my hometown, you're on a grid, it's Northwest, you're going to be fine. There are things that go on in Southeast that are, Fresno has a notoriously high gang violence rate. And when you put the haves and have-nots in a place, like people have to have their basic needs met to even talk about the things that we're talking about. I
Yeah.
mean,
Have to be able to live like a mammal
yeah,
first.
I
Yeah.
mean, it goes to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, if your human safety isn't met, like, you don't get to have these like self-actualizing discussions. Self-awareness is to me, I look at it so many days like this journey that I'm on it's a gift because I have a roof over my head, because my kids are, in good schools. And so you can't feel guilty about that, but what are you going to do with it? Like, how are you going to make those other situations better? And from a distance, from teaching through story, from, just being a contributing member of society, yes, but like, how do we get in and make other people feel safe enough to even be able to think about, what are their values? What are their values? What is their purpose in life? Because that's what we know. I've had very little in my life. I've had, tons and tons. And material things don't matter if we can't answer those fundamental human questions about why we're here, what is our purpose. Um, and if we're just worried about getting food on the table, then we're dealing with a different segment of society than what you and I get to walk around in Hermosa Beach, right?
Do you have white guilt?
I mean, that's definitely something I've been working on, and I realize I've had that privileged guilt my whole life. Absolutely. I mean, I remember being a kid, a 7-year-old kid, watching the news and seeing what was going on in Israel, and having the thought at 7 or 8 years old, I am so lucky to be born where I'm born. There are no bombs going off in my street. And I didn't know the first thing about why the bombs were going off. I remember being terrified. So yeah, there's always been that element of guilt of just feeling like I'm just incredibly lucky to have the life that I have. But that has evolved on this, journey to self-awareness, to say, what good is that going to do you? If you feel guilty, you're going to be more quiet. That shame will make you silent. And when you know your intention in life, when you know like why you get up every day, you don't let those silence you anymore. Because no, I don't feel guilty anymore. I know that what I have been given, I've been charged to do the best that I can do with that. And I get up every day and try to do that. And that comes with taking care of myself first, and then, taking that to my dinner table with my kids and teaching them what I teach them. And then it rolls out from there. And
Yeah.
that's the whole reason, for the Optimist Journal, is to just give people a platform to tell their stories while I tell mine. And so we can build that better understanding and not feel guilty and not feel shame, and know that, every story carries immense worth and is there to help connect us. So
Yeah. Do you think that people's personal experiences, like conquering their own demons and just um, experiencing conflict and maybe coming out of the other end and smelling like a rose, or with a heightened level of success, if not prosperity, or whatever level you consider that, albeit monetary gain or just emotionally stable? Or do you think that the way certain people conquer their own demons makes them less empathetic to the people who haven't? Can I give you an example?
yeah, absolutely.
Casey Jennings, the guy, cut by the high school team, not very tall for volleyball, had to chop down trees to make his name, to become where he is, to become the man he is. And because of the path and the conflict that he had to do and conquer, I think might make him more resentful for people who haven't. Okay, Casey, you're listening, and I know you feel me on this, because I do think, like, I think in his mind, if he did it, why the hell can't you? You know what I'm saying? He said he might feel like he was in a worse situation and he came out of it, so why can't you? That's one example. Second example, I grew up in a very right-wing family, okay? And my right-wing family, and it's crazy because my mom's black and my father, who I never really met, is white, but my stepfather was a hardcore, a blue-collar Republican. So there's certain principles that you grow up with, like, oh, this black guy doesn't have a job. It's because he doesn't want to work. Oh, there's unemployment because these guys are on the street. They don't want to work, you know? So you grow up believing a certain thing, right? A certain way. I'm at church. Oh, if you're gay, it's an abomination. Same-sex marriage. Are you kidding? What's wrong with these people? You know what I'm saying? You're just you're born sick in the head. You know, suicide. Oh, that's against God's law. You want to experience hell as a death, then deja vu. Go ahead and kill yourself. So there were certain demons that took me the first 25 years of my life to conquer. All right, that's basically half my life. I'm 50 now. Where I'm like, I did it. You know, I get it. Why can't other people just I have little empathy for the stupid. I have some empathy for the ignorant being people don't understand. I was ignorant. I wasn't stupid. And for a while I was stupid because stupidity is protected ignorance. Okay. So giving you these two examples, there's Casey Jennings and maybe his lack of empathy of what's real in his head and what's real to someone else. My lack of empathy and the demons that I had to conquer that I really can't understand, you know, why other people can't just take the time and conquer those demons too. So do you think people get caught up in their own personal journeys? Because you're all about the journey. You're really not. You're more about the journey than the destination, pretty much more than anybody I've ever met. Do you think people get caught up in their journeys? That people on the negative side. Do you think people getting caught up in their journeys makes them less empathetic? The floor is yours, sweetheart.
I do think that we can head down a path that can build up these layers of toughness on us, that if we're not, if we've been through something tough. Take Casey, for example. And I don't know a lot about Casey's story, but what you just told me, like when we get those
I'm a fan. Go ahead.
Oh, I am a fan too. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're actually friends because of Casey, right? I mean, he put our heads together. So
oh my God, that's right. He's probably listening to that, saying that right now. Please.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we get momentum. Go ahead.
For sure. No. I think these layers of toughness that can be put on us. Yes, I do think that what we do is we become kind of a singular force in the world. If we see ourselves as that singular force that's can charge through anything and has this one way to look at things because it's what got us through. Well, what got us through is not always what's going to get someone else through, right? And I think that we have that comparison is the thief of joy, right? So when we compare our story to somebody else's story, we can either belittle our story or we can also make our story sound like it's the toughest thing that if I can make it through this, like you said, anybody can make it through anything. I love the underdog stories. I am such a fan of people that, when you get cut, when you get dumped, when you get like that thing that happens to you that you never thought you could survive, those are the things those are the biggest catalysts for change and transformation in our lives. Unfortunately, when things are all going well, we don't always find that gratitude for the simple things. And that in the end, that's what makes the human experience so great, is when we can find the gratitude for the little things in life. It's not the big trip and the huge night out. It's the sunrise. It's I get to jump in the ocean today. That's the stuff that's what makes the day great, right? So I'm getting off course a little bit, but that toughness, when we start to realize, like, not find the gratitude in the little things and also just believe that our way is the only way, it discounts people's, they talk about trauma, like big T, little t trauma. Like, what is traumatic to me, that might not be like a big deal to Casey because my life has been different than his, but my ability to understand where you are coming from, like that empathy, that is the greatest gift that society can have right now. We have to be able to put our own story aside And I do think that, yes, I do think that we can sink into our own stories a little. I wouldn't say too much, but it can thicken our skin and make us believe that, what I've been through has been so life defining and tragic that, something is, we can't empathize with someone else. I have definitely seen that. I think it's a question of when something tough comes your way, are you the type of person that's going to link arms with the people around you, or are you going to believe that you are so tough and so resilient that you can do anything on your own? And that's not the world I want to live in. I want to see people link up and understand each other, and even when we're coming from different perspectives.
But isn't it amazing that some of these people, through their personal experience, makes them less empathetic? And really, I'm not talking about Casey anymore. I'm talking about me,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
journey I took to become. The only thing that helped me was I used the exact same journey and experiences as a reason, or as a said way to bring more people together, right? When you think about this, we just said, if Casey, we're talking about Casey, and so I've been one of his biggest critics and biggest praisers, but it's so weird that we're talking about him, because without Casey, we don't know each other.
Right.
We don't meet. That's so. I think us growing up with personal experiences, growing up with people, sometimes your political ideology differences are become different, or you go different paths of how you believe something should be done. But the important thing is to remember that we have friends that have crazy ideas, and we love them to pieces. Right? Come on, you can't. I mean, I think that's one of the things that separates us, which goes to my next common denominator. This is why I'm steering the wheel for a minute. The next common denominator was people feel like you can only be friends if you agree on everything, which I think is another obstacle that gets in people's way. Like Casey and I, we talked twice before and after me and Rob talked about Kerry Waltz on the Sports Debate Tuesday, and my opinion of him hasn't changed. The level of respect I have for the man still remains profound, because you look at a whole body of work, right? And I still love the guy to pieces. So I want your thoughts on just posing the question. And if you have a solution, that's fine too. But I mean, solutions are for people to find out as individuals. But my question is, how do we get people to understand that you don't have to agree with everything anyone says to love them, to respect them, to know them on a positive level, but on a civil level, still behave like mammals? Do you understand?
Right.
You understand my question?
My least favorite thing to see these days, and I feel like I see it a lot, and maybe it's in people that are a little younger than me, but that post that says, if you are voting for, just defriend me, I can't be your friend. Like, we are so much more as human beings than one belief or one vote, or like to dumb it down and make our human existence so small that's just, again, not a world I want to live in. Yeah. And you can go to the point, like, is it anybody's? It's nobody's business who I vote for. There's a reason why you go in, cast your vote, and drop it in there, and go out and get to be the person that you want to be in the world, right? I mean, we're not defined by that vote. Now, our brains work differently. Like, there's science out there that shows, like, we can be born. Like, there's our, is it nature or nurture? We're born with like a more liberal or a more conservative brain. Like, are we big risk takers, or are we, people that tend to follow the rules? That stuff is genetic too, right? So we are so much deeper and more different than that one belief that someone wants to pin us down on and say, like, oh, you must not be able to, you're not a good person. If you're a Trump voter, don't talk to me. I mean,
same thing with Obama.
Yeah.
In 2012, when Obama ran against Mitt Romney, and when Obama won, I had friends that voted Republican who had upside down flags on their thing, signaling distress. But to me, I was just like, wow. Speaking of respecting the flag, it was as someone who has no party preference. Been an independent most of my life, and I was like a Democrat for a cup of coffee. I saw it both ways. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's just so much more to, the power of the story of, the first Black president, or, I sit here and go, I've been a Republican most of my life, but you can't pin me down on, fiscal issues versus social issues. Like, if you wanted to break that all down, like, you're not going to be able to put me in a box and say, oh, she thinks this, because one, those opinions, like you said, have evolved over time, and they've evolved on my life experience, right? What I've come into contact with, what I now understand that I didn't, as an 18-year-old who just registered to vote.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I love that. Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, our life experience is going to mold and shape us if we allow it to, unless if we lock down and say, this is the way it is. And, there is also some science out there that says, we just become more entrenched as we grow older. Like, that is what I do not want to be. I want to learn every day, open my perspective, open my eyes to what is going on around me, and not just say, like, I'm a little bit more like what I was, in the formative years of my life, and I'm just going to keep believing that stuff. We have to open our eyes and let the things that are going on around us shape us every day without feeling threatened that it's going to somehow contradict something that we believed before. It doesn't make us less of a person. It doesn't make us weaker. It doesn't make us, easily
evil
swayed.
people. Yeah. Or like inherently evil people or bad people. Got it. Yep. It's strange you should say that about like people not having a clue about your political beliefs, because for me, it's been the opposite. I have friends on the left who are pretty sure I'm Republican.
Yeah.
Because maybe on one post, I'm like, Kamala Harris that's an idiotic VP pick. Oh, there goes Jason again with his right-wing views, And then, a week later, I'm like, okay, Trump says he loves the military, but he's pimping out our soldiers of Saudi Arabia, right? Right now we have 2 battalions operating under the Saudi prince's command, a country who has ties of financing Al Qaeda, who attacked the World Trade Center, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, you say you're a centrist, but you're everything you talk about is liberal this, liberal that. So I like, for you, people have no clue, but for me, they have the wrong clue, the polar opposite way, and I'm like, God, does like Facebook send you a signal when I go the other way and like to combat
Watch
that?
The Social Dilemma. I'm telling you, they do.
But I mean,
fascinating. And that's your perfect example of one. I always like your debate is intelligent because it's based on your life experience. So you have this diverse background, and it's amazing to see what you pull into those arguments. That's why I don't engage on a lot of political Facebook speech, because I don't want my newsfeed to look that way. Since I started the Optimist Journal, I get my news elsewhere, but I follow just a lot of positivity and wellness and growth mindset stuff. And my feed it's a beautiful place to be.
It really is.
But when I see you put up really thoughtful debate, and I love it because you never know which side you're going to, not side, but you don't know where you're going to come down.
Yeah.
But it's well thought out and it's articulate versus just this shut down, party line that is so just, turn that stuff
Speaking
off.
of privilege, I enjoy a centrist privilege. If you look at the people who post, they're Democrat and Republican. Some of them are hardcore one way and the other. I post, like you said, the reason why it's thoughtful and insightful is not because of me being enlightened of just seeing things for what they are, but actually the colors you're going to get from like anyone that insults anyone's character instead of the argument, I just threaten to delete their post. I need dialogue. You and Fallon Moana had a different stance on the whole
Yeah.
Kerry Walsh thing, which we can more than get into if you want. But I almost think the wheels fell off on that.
I know.
But
Yeah, you have definitely
yeah,
digested that
yeah,
very well on your
and
podcast.
yeah, and the
And
poop came out this smooth texture, digested.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And I mean, it was part of that was why I wrote the blog I wrote last week. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just that debate and knowing that, you know, Fallon has truly been one of my favorite friends, like people that I found through volleyball and coaching. And
Yeah,
my heart is always with her.
children out there, you want someone you want to look up to. You want
Yeah.
someone you want to look up to who's had to chop down some trees. I give you Fallon for number one. You don't look up to me. I'm a fucking moron, guys. I have some things, my military service, my honorable service, going back to school and being able to graduate, magna cum laude, as a returning adult student. The competitor in me, the program's ranked number 2 in the country. My volleyball career, my indoor career, played in Germany. We won this and that. No more of this validation stuff. But there's certain things I do in my life and what I do is inspiring, but some of the things I say are not always. I am not a freaking role model.
But you know what?
I cannot be your Superman.
I don't think you should. I don't think you should discount yourself like that. But why I like you and what I'm realizing so much about in society these days is that so often people think that they have to have everything. And as a writer, I can even be guilty of this. Like, you want to wrap everything up with a bow on it and deliver it perfectly to your audience. But if you are a thoughtful person, I don't think shooting from the hip is always bad. I mean, if you're not intending to hurt somebody with your words, which, I mean, I know that I never open my mouth intending to hurt somebody with my words. That is not something that I struggle with. And I don't think you do either. I think you're just an honest, and being honest about what you think and not having to go, oh, should I say it or should I not?
Yeah.
And like that, I think is harming society too. Like, we are afraid to speak up and you are not afraid to speak up. So even if it comes out imperfectly, that's not something that people should not be judged on. It didn't come out perfect.
Yeah.
Like, know your intention,
I think where we're talking about our next common denominator we're attacking about people having to agree on everything we say is connected, and I'm glad because now your genius allowed us to bring that back and explore that, and I think the next question that's connected, and I think if we can answer this question, then we can tackle the common denominator. You listening at home, as individuals, not collectively, because collectively we can talk about other people ad nauseum. Are you too defensive? For the people listening to this, people watching the video right now, look at me. Are you too defensive? Are you too defensive? I, for a long time, have been. In some cases, I still am speaking only for myself, and I'm going to ask you the same question. I'll give you an example on a small scale. A person has like a problem with the music I'm listening to, right? And maybe the lyrics are explicit, and maybe the kids around or whatever. And once I see them, I realize that I turn that off. But in my mind, the defensiveness in me is like, wait a second, the music you're playing right now, because it's the same reason I don't see it as defensive because I'm just enjoying music is the same reason you're blind to what you're doing. Like Cardi B is she's not. I'm just gonna say she ain't gonna be everybody's cup of tea, but. How is she more or less offensive than an 80s song, Angel in a Centerfold? That you're blasting out for everybody to hear. It's music, it's 80s music, it's harmless, No, Angel in a Centerfold is about a guy who got dumped by a girl who is now doing porn. Okay? She's doing porn. And we're laughing, Wendy, because we're almost the same age limit, and we have never thought about that. We have never thought about Angel in a Centerfold as that. Hungry Like a Wolf, Duran Duran. What the hell kind of pedo shit is that, dude? It's so I think me being defensive automatically, like, oh my God, why don't you take a look at yourself before you start judging me? In the past has made me be like, no, my music stays on. Screw you. But now that's changed. I'm like, no, wait. My freedoms and my self-expression should not impede onto the will and the freedom and the sanity of life of other people. Boom, that's off. That's it.
Yeah.
Case closed.
Well,
You
I
know,
mean,
are you? Do you find yourself being defensive about certain criticisms?
it depends. I guess if you're talking about criticisms on what you believe, like on a public policy or a current event debate, I don't really feel defensive. If I feel that I've hurt somebody's feelings, like on my first feeling is, oh shoot, like I shouldn't have said that. But when I go back, I think back into like checking my intention and saying, okay, if you said this, out of a place, like you weren't intending to hurt somebody, then I do believe like that's something that I've worked on and wanting to enter into this public policy debate. You have to develop a little bit thicker skin because you're not going to make everybody happy. And if you're that person that wants to make everybody happy and you just want this message that, like, that's not a message. You know what I mean? Like, embrace optimism. That can be my message. But are you gonna, if you enter into the debate on any topic, you are going to upset somebody. So you better know what you believe. You better have the skin thick enough to take what's going to come back at you. And you need to have the humility to listen. But humility it's not that false humility that just kind of shuts you down and says, oh, you know better than I do. I know that I have a right to my opinion, and I know my intention is not to hurt anyone. I'm just coming from my perspective. So, but I am curious to know, like, how did your perspective, like on the music that you just talked about, that example, like, did that change? Would you say that changed with becoming a father? Like, does that?
No.
No.
Very good question, because the question is force fed down your throat. Do you want your kids listening to that? Or do you want your kids doing that? So when people constantly pound that question to you, then I start asking the question you just asked. I'm a father, this and that. And I'm like, do I want my kids listen to Cardi B? No. And I'm not using Cardi B as a prime example because I can't even name a song by her. All I'm saying is that the genre music that I like could very well be her. Like, I thought I hated Kanye West until I heard 4 different songs, and all 4 of those songs were Kanye West. And I'm like, no, I don't. I like Kanye West. So to answer your question, no, it doesn't, because I answer how I want to shape my kids' individual, how I want to shape my kids' individual critical thinking. There are certain things she ain't gonna do. Okay, she ain't gonna curse. I am. I'm the father. You're the son. You're the daughter. That's it. Okay. I don't want my daughter to drink alcohol. Okay, she's not the legal drinking age. I'm gonna drink alcohol. I don't want my daughter to serve in the military, because even though it shapes who you are and instills this discipline, and I think there's a part of me that thinks everyone should serve at least 2 years. I don't think I want my daughter joining the military. I don't think I want her being, have to go through boot camp and be restructured until like a harder version and what I really want her to be. I don't want my daughter cock-locked and ready to rock. I definitely don't want my daughter to study theater. Okay, a BFA in acting is the most useless degree you're gonna have. Okay, so if you start saying I don't want to do any of these things because you don't want your kids to do it, it's a slippery slope. I wouldn't want my kids to like vote for a certain person, but at some point she's got to think for herself, and she's going to vote for that person. And like you said, just like in old friends that we grew up with that we have crazy ideas and disagree and still love them to pieces, that's how I got to be a father. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And I always, it's been my experience. I've been through some of those things that you've said, I don't want my kids drinking. I have teenagers, right? I've been through lots of these places that you haven't been yet. And you say, the example that you set, to me, it very much matters, but also knowing that, there are some rules that are black and white. And you can say, I'm the adult, you're the child. But I do have.
Yeah. How come you get to stay up late, Dad?
Yeah, it's a been there, done that.
Sorry.
Yeah. But I do think that the way that we show up. So much of my motivation every day is to set the example and to say to my kids, like, where you're going to find me, what to expect from me. And even if that looks different than, the way someone else does something, I think kids just need to know that they have someone that they can feel safe with and that they know what to expect.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, the kids live now, like the lyrics now are so much more explicit than when we were growing up.
They're just out there more.
Yeah, it's like, and do they become desensitized to it? Like, I remember when Two Life Crew came out, I was in high school, and I was like, what in the world just went through the parking lot? I'm like, how can they say that on, live? Okay, that was, or the Beastie Boys, like that stuff
From
was
pop
mind-blowing.
that P to Martinez. F Martinez.
And now you think about what kids hear. I'm looking like I'll when I put on music for a group of kids that are doing a volleyball workout, I'm looking like, how can I find a playlist that's not explicit? Just because I don't want to be the person that's throwing that out there, right, to a group of kids.
Yeah, and kids also have to understand as you shape them. If you want to be a real role model for these people listening, they have to understand that people are different. If you have this rigid example and you want your kid to be exactly like you, don't curse, don't do this, you know what's going to happen? It's going to make them less tolerant of people around them that are different than you, than what you're purporting yourself to be, because you're probably not being real, because you have to be a different person to make your kid whatever. So now you have to change who you are.
I have a 20-year-old who has been known to, curse a little bit, whether it's on the volleyball court or coming through a tough day or whatever, because I want her to be able to express herself to her mom. I don't shut her down. When my 13-year-old hears it, he goes, wait, why does she get to say that? Because I want my kids to learn that life is not black and white.
Yeah. So
when you say they become intolerant, like just because you said, a couple of curse words, it doesn't make you a bad person. Now, do I want you to understand that you can't go into a job interview, that is not the representation of your best self?
Right.
It's not, it's a weaker moment. But sometimes, we got to get it out. And I always say better out than in. I don't want that stuff being stuffed down. If you're frustrated, let it out. And I want to be the one that you're going to let it out to. So like, as you evolve through that process with kids, like it changes you too. Because you don't see things as black and white anymore. I want them to see the same thing I'm saying about society. I want to train that right into the kids that go out my door.
Yeah. I'm going to say it is the best way I know how. If saying effed up, I don't believe I'm cleaning this up right now, but if saying effed up is a better way to describe something than messed up, say effed up. Now, the reason why you don't want your kid to say effed up, because in their childhood, there's not going to be a situation where effed up better describes the situation than messed up, okay? Effed up usually applies to adult situations. Someone gets shot in the back, that's effed up. Okay, that's not messed up. You not getting seconds on dessert, that's not effed up. That's messed up. That's what I want to teach my kids.
Yeah.
But what I don't want people to do is stop making up things that the media is teaching them. Stop having received opinions on this music. Oh, like the interview with Ice Cube. And this is, again, all connected to shape thinking and thinking alike. I saw this awesome interview. You disrespect women by calling them hoes. He says, do you think that's okay? And he's like, I don't call women hoes. And he says, I call hoes hoes. The people who are women that don't know that know they're not hoes, they know I'm not talking about them. Yeah, you have to accept the reality that you let a lady be a lady and let a hoe be a hoe. What if the person you called a hoe is acting like a hoe? Right? What if the person you called an asshole is acting like an asshole? So he dismissed that. And she's like, but don't you think it's a misogyny thing to degrade women and this and that? He's like, it's not a misogyny thing. He said, you know what a misogyny thing? Misogyny is not a gangster rapper problem. Misogyny is a traditional white male problem. He says, you never saw a rapper that told a woman she can't wear pants to church. You never saw a rapper that said you can't be a minister. You never saw a rapper that thinks it's okay to pay a woman 70 cents on the dollar doing the same work. And he says, I'm not using the white male as a red herring, but I will say, before you start talking about rap as a misogyny problem, it's gangster rap at the time in the 90s was still very new. Not rap, but gangster rap was. Or gangster rap as a national explosion was new. It's always been new. So he says, I'm not offering that as a red herring, but for you to say that we're the biggest, opposition or the biggest contributors to misogyny is being disingenuous.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I also say, like, you always have to look back at the culture of where something is born, right? I mean, music is one of our greatest forms of communication. Like, music is one of our greatest forms of healing. Like, I listen to music every day, and I listen to all different kinds of music, and I have a piano in my house that, like, I know music is so powerful. It's one of the things that I wrap that into my blog too, because the lyrics in music are so powerful that they can change people, and I think if you listen to, you can, the rap that you're talking about, you can hear stories of pain. I mean, whether you're listening to Eminem or Ice Cube, like, it's not necessarily a racial thing, but it is born of the culture and the story that those people were experiencing at the time. Right?
Yeah, and they should be unapologetic on how they say it, right?
Right.
I'll give you a line from Ice Cube. I thought back when I was robbing my own con, the police didn't pay it no mind. But when I start robbing the white folks, now I'm in the pen with the soap and the rope. I said it before, and I still call it. Any motherfucker with a color is most wanted. So that's his way of getting a point across. Could he have said it a better way? Sure. God, I just interrupted you.
Well, I mean, I couldn't write that lyric. There's part of me that's like, dang, I love to write. I'd love to write a song someday. I listen. Any of the artists that I really like, if I look at it, they're the ones that write the songs too.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, if you trace back, you can find the artist who writes their own music, or you find that those artists also write music for other people. You will know, where the true talent lies. It's an incredible talent. And so I will always find the awe of being able to be that artistic, creative person and tell your story. If you can do it in a song, like, my hat's off to you.
Well, composition to me is the common denominator of music, okay? Music is so powerful, Wendy, that there are songs out there that don't have words.
Yeah.
And you feel about it a certain way.
All right? I mean, and you can feel it. And it can be in another language. It can be an instrumental, like piano.
Moonlight Sonata.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's the most hauntingly beautiful thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I took 3 years piano and I still can't play because I'm still too emotional. I'm still too emotionally attached to it. All right. Yeah. I'm a snowflake. I'm a piano snowflake when it comes to playing Moonlight Sonata.
Yeah, my son plays. I mean, he's an 18-year-old. He plays, and he's gone right now. I sat down and was trying to play some piano last night. I haven't played in 20 years, but it's because I want to hear that sound in my house.
Is he Stanford?
Yes.
That's the Stanford one.
He's not at Stanford. They didn't take him on campus. There's no freshmen on campus. So a family, I mean, and we have to put a plug in for Save Stanford men's volleyball.
Thank you.
Please. Yes, my 18-year-old's lifelong dream to play volleyball at Stanford. He got there, and not only did he lose the senior season to, coronavirus, graduation, and I kept thinking, okay, this is a tough little stretch in life, but we're going to get to Stanford, and life's going to get better again. And all of a sudden they dropped their men's volleyball program. So this is supposed to be the last season, which who knows if there'll even be a normal season this year. And that lifelong dream has been, right now cut short. There is a massive push to reinstate the program. So if you go on, I know they have an Instagram called, it's Save Stanford MVB men's volleyball. It has their website on there, which I think their website is the same, but they're raising money. There's a petition you can sign. if you're volleyball fans listening to political talk today, get on there. I mean, that program has national championships under the belt, tons of Olympians that have come out of there. And,
Great head coach.
you do not want to cut short the dreams of these young men and this great sport that is nonviolent, that is not causing massive concussions and head injuries.
Easily affordable.
And these kids have worked so hard, and they're going to be great leaders in the world, and they deserve to be in this program and learn through this program and keep playing the sport that they've loved. And then they will go out and be great leaders in the world, like so many other men's volleyball players have done. So do not cut this program.
Lambert.
My heart's with
Clay Stanley, Mike Lambert.
Yes. And the alumni have been awesome. They've been, really
it's USC worthy. Their alumni is USC worthy. Like there's Harvard, there's Stanford, and sorry.
Yeah. So, and they're, these are diverse young men who have worked so hard. Like they have worked hard at everything. I mean, like I was saying, Luke plays the piano. He got good grades. He's a great kid, but they all are, and for them to lose this program right now in the midst of this pandemic, these kids have lost so much. And this has been their lifelong dream. They don't know what it's like to be our age and have the greater perspective. This is it. This is what is fundamental to them. That does not, letting it get cut is it's heartbreaking.
Before I talk about the volleyball thing, Wendy Jones, people, power mom, okay? Got a son at Stanford, got a daughter playing beach volleyball at TCU for Hector. I mean, this is how you want to talk about role models, how to raise your kids. This woman, they're all power volleyball players. She is a power mom, period. Stanford, citing finances as a pretext is unacceptable in a school whose endowment is. I'm gonna shut up about Harvard because it's not even Harvard and them are not even close. Harvard, they take care of their own. USC, I only realize they take care of their own because you live in a certain zip code where the alumni take care of their own. But any school that has a women's team that should and that has a men's team should never get rid of the men's team. You already have the facilities. Right? You already have the net. All you got to do is raise the damn thing. You don't have to travel because where you are, the conference you're in, the MPSF, schools like Ohio State or the MIVA or Penn State or Princeton, my boy Sam Schweitsky, plugging him in for Princeton, they're willing to come to you. Okay. The amount of money it takes for you to play host is nothing. You're not losing money off scholarships. Men's volleyball only offers 4.5 scholarships. Only offers 4.5 scholarships. And if you have a roster with 18 people, I don't even know how they're slicing up that cake, but you start believing those other parents less when my son got a full scholarship. And I'm like, no, he didn't. You're lying. Stop lying. Just say academic too. Stop trying to act like I don't know anything about volleyball. You're a liar. Liar. Parent liar. So save Stanford volleyball. You're fresh out of excuses. Keep the sport. A sport that has like you said, historical success.
Yes, no, absolutely. And for the growth of the game, I mean, we're seeing sports are what we see the fabric of sports connecting our society right now when things went away, but we cannot be just a basketball dominated. You can't just look at the economics. When we know, Jason, what sports has done in our lives, I mean, I'm not ever going to have a medal to show for it. I don't have any big fancy titles, but sports has been such a fundamental part, and I am still playing, what all of my relationships, what I do every day, the joy it brings me. But these kids their leadership is forged. Like this is where they have chosen to put in their chips. This is where they're being turned into leaders. Like they don't get to just pivot and go, join another team. Like they have spent hours and hours and hours, and to cut it short when you are making $1 billion a year in interest on your endowment, which I know they're saying is earmarked for other things and it can't be used for athletics
but all of these things. In the end,
it's a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's an incomprehensible amount of money. So, my heart's not. And when you go to the lifelong dream of what it takes to get to a Stanford, this is not like these kids have given up a lot to get to this point. They weren't out screwing around. They're it takes extra dedication to get to that spot, and to have it ripped out from under you at this juncture. I mean, 2020, like, can we be
And an
done with
elite
it?
school, and
Yeah,
there's no excuse. I
no.
mean, are we volleyball biased? You damn right we are.
Yeah.
Wendy, tell everybody what you're doing before you came on the podcast. What were you doing? Say it with me.
Oh, I was at the beach at 6:45 this morning playing volleyball.
That's right. So you darn right we're playing volleyballs. Did you? Wow, we definitely tackled the whole
I know.
agree on
We always
everything.
do
No,
that.
but the agree on everything
You
thing.
can edit. You can do whatever you got to do because
No,
we
but
always.
we did our part as far as like opposing the question.
Yeah.
Are you not are you willing to not be someone's friend because of one thing or whatever, when all the things that you do agree on to make the world a better place, or to maintain your beautiful friendship that you had your whole life. If listen, there are going to be some cases where it's not worth it
Yeah.
and you got to leave them.
For sure.
I will say this: take a break. Know when to take a break from politics. You said something in your journal that you became sick from it.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
I became sick from 2012.
Yeah.
Like physically sick, felt weaker, didn't want to play volleyball. The life got sucked out of me. Just at that time, I was leaning so hard left that my arguments I had with people on the right and other people on the left, the arguments were so elongated that even Kelly, my wife who leans left, unfriended me.
Oh gosh.
My own wife unfriended me. Okay, that's how bad it got. She didn't even want. She just thought, she's like, I'm getting out of this conversation, and if you know what's best for your health, just stop indulging in these people, she would call them. But there was a reason I did it, and it came from a place of caring, and I'll never stop doing it. But what I have learned to do is when to know when to take a break from my own sanity. And how do you feel about what I said, and how it applies to you? Because I understand, like I said, you went through a similar journey.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I was raised in a political family. My dad held office for most of my life. It just comes with the territory. You just have these discussions, but we weren't raised with a 24-hour news ticker. 9/11, the one thing I will say that, like, that was the day the 24-hour news ticker was born, and it never went away. Right. So that changed us fundamentally. I mean, on that day, there was so much news. Do we need one today? Do we need to be inundated with every single point of news that is just like, no,
No.
there needs to be time to just sit. That's where the mindfulness practice comes.
Interrupt a broadcast if something can't wait.
Yeah. And those were things, and they made you turn and notice, and you remember the speech that was made after that great thing or that tragic thing. Like, we're going to, on one hand, it can make you numb, or it can absolutely enrage you and make you not be able to just relax and calm yourself and have that intelligent, long debate that doesn't have to be right. So I mean, you do have to learn to take a break. And it's the same thing with even pandemic news or, racial tensions. Like, you cannot, the more you take in on TV, it just overruns your nervous system. It's not a good thing.
Yeah. Did you listen to Fallon at all last week? Last week.
I did listen
Last
to
week. How
some.
about 2 days ago? Sorry.
Yeah, it was just a couple days ago.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's a fun episode. Fallon made
That
an,
is,
an emphasis
yeah, I
on
loved
affecting people who.
your volleyball talk, and obviously the public policy talk as well, but just like learning, talking about her energy on the court and what she's learned from, how she shows up and how she, makes the person that she's playing with better. Like, I always, I see the metaphors in life for, what we do on the court and how it, what we take from
She
the court.
deserves the rub too, man.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So,
if you think about a girl who went to Miracosta High School, that prestigious program, went to USC, another prestigious program, just played indoor overseas, doing this for a living, not waiting tables at night, evolves, makes the evolution to the beach and is out there, full of fire and this and that. And I'm like, imagine she's, I don't want to make it about race, but imagine that girl was white. My God, she'd be on like the front cover of every freaking volleyball magazine and local news you could possibly think of. So,
Yeah.
and oh, Jason's race baiting again. But I would just want people to use their imagination. I'm not actually starting Esh. I just want you to imagine, you
Well,
know.
no, there's so much truth to that because you know what? I still get asked. I mean, I'm getting older, but I look like your typical volleyball player, right? So I could walk up and down the street and people will go, "Oh, do you play volleyball?" Like knowing the answer, right? I mean, to always have that be, I mean, you can take that into so many different areas of discussion that we're having, whether it's race or it's body positivity or it's, the gender discussion. But when you're judged just by what you look like, it doesn't leave you feeling, you don't always, it's hard to build confidence. And Fallon's amazing because that confidence that she has is, I mean, it's intoxicating, right? I mean, you watch her and you feel stronger,
Good year
right?
for her last year, huh?
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, so you judging a book by its cover is about one of the worst things you can do because people are made up of everything that runs so deep into them. So just to take a look and say, like, people will. I've had that done to me. I've got these two kids that are, college Division I athletes, and they think I'm a tiger mom, and I will sit here and tell them those two did what they were going to do. I just drove them. Maybe we had some good discussion in the car occasionally, but like I have two more that they're going to do their own thing. It has very little to do with me. They are who they are, right? But it's not because of what they look like. If you look at, I mean, my youngest is probably going to be 6, 7, and probably never play a day of college sports in his life, right? I mean, you cannot just judge a book by its cover. You have to look at the person on the inside, and that's the thing. I learned that about Fallon because she coached my daughter's 12s team. That's how I met her. I didn't know the Fallon story.
Right.
I'm not a South Bay native. I
Me neither.
I
Yeah.
just watched her coach 12-year-old girls and go, wow, she gets them. She gets down on their level and she gives them confidence. That's the thing. That's the best thing that any kid's ever going to get from sports, you know?
Yeah.
And then where they go from there, whether it's scholarships and gold medals or it's just lifelong. I have friends that I've made and I feel like every, conversation I have on the beach or in a locker room is so connected and good. Like we're going to get what we get, but those coaches that put that confidence and help instill confidence in kids, like there is nothing that I like to see
Yeah.
more. And so that's my foundation with
And
Fallon.
she's very explicit that she's only there to inspire the young. She's
Yeah.
already conceded in her
And she
mind.
does it. I've
But
seen
she's
it
already conceded in
firsthand.
her mind like old people. They're already set in
Yeah.
their ways and this and that. And all of these arguments that you see on these social networks are not young people. They're old. They are the people older than her that are set and they have a way of thinking that in this world of labeling and the whole validation game people play is omnipresent in California.
Yeah.
When you look real deep in a place like this, all that glitter's not gold. Which is
Yeah.
the reason why I'm so glad we're doing this episode. If you remember, a week ago, I hit kind of a low. I got caught up becoming what I despise. Like I hate the validation game, and I hate having to come back at people and judge them for who they are for judging me who I am. That's not the way I've ever wanted to operate. I just want to let my light shine, and if you're there, you're there, and if you're not, you're not. And if you want to have a conversation, have a conversation. But I'm very, very big on respect. It's very easy for me, like if a juniors player looks at me like I say, hey, good playing out there or whatever, and she kind of like smirks at me or whatever, then it's very natural for me to say, are you sure you want to act like that? What you wet? Look at you, wet behind the ears, breath smell like Similac. You haven't even done shit, and you get a compliment when I act like that. It's very easy to take an old school guy that's cranky. Oh, I would never do this, and I'm like, well, nobody cares. You're old. You let yourself go. Okay, you're fat now. Okay, stop acting like you're someone that you whatever. Right? It's very easy for me. Like if a player in the bottom of the main draw, smirks at me because he does this one thing better than most, he automatically thinks he's like a better human being, or he could sing better or do all these things. It's very easy for me to be like, dude, you think you're acting like a rock star, but you live in your mother's garage. You know what I'm saying? You're not. If you want to be a rock star, be a rock star. Move out your fucking parents' house. Oh, and pay for your own phone. So it's very easy for me to break out the haterade. So I'm at this thing where they trying to look at me who I am and don't know what I've done. And I'm going to skip that part because, again, I become what I despise. So I'm at this point where I'm just like, who are they to compare themselves to me and what I've done? I'm also at this point where I got people telling me you're making this big race argument on social network, but there's so many bigger things to worry about, and you're really trying to hammer through that it's not a big issue to the people that are not affected, right? So there's that. And recently I've gotten my integrity questioned, like my behavior and how I carry things and how the decisions I make, some of the decisions I make may not be befitting of reputations by association, which I won't get into. And I was just at this emotional low. I'm in my command center now, but I could not think. I could not read. I could not watch sports. I just got the freak out of the house. And I went to Starbucks and sat outside because Starbucks is where we can just think. And I just got my hat on, my helmet, and I'm just like, how do I, I'm living in the South Bay. Why am I feeling like this? What's wrong with me? And timing was everything. Who comes along? It's Wendy freaking Jones. And when I saw you, I said, Wendy Jones! Oh my God, Wendy Jones! And you're like, are you feeling it now or something? Are we feeling the same thing? And for the people listening at home, the reason why I'm even indulging in this is because the reason this episode happened is because I think I speak a little bit for you. We were kind of feeling the same thing. And I was really, really hopeful that you and I could just go on air and discuss ways that we're dealing with some of these things and how it makes us feel individually. And anyone that can relate to us that's feeling the same way, feel free to post. Feel free to comment on the Optimist Journal. Feel free to express your differences, because honestly, differences make us, bring us together. They really don't separate us. I swear to you. So
no, and you know what? Passion is nothing if it's not met with compassion from other people. So whatever our passion is, like it's our responsibility to bring that to the forefront. And then hopefully there are people who will listen that will develop that compassion for our perspective, right? Whether they agree with us or not. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the place that both you and I were coming from. I think it's okay to acknowledge you're not feeling great that day. And I'm like, I'm always happy to see you, and we always have the best conversations. So I really thank you for indulging me. And that human connection is everything to me. So, and you're really good at putting it together. So thank you.
Yeah. And that's how you affect me. You keep me from becoming what I despise.
Thank you.
It really, this whole story, that whole diatribe I just told you was really just avoiding becoming what I despise. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to walk around like I'm better than someone because I could do one or two things in my whole life, I don't want to be the guy be like, hey, I got, F you, I got my own shoes and my own clothes. I'm not, I don't, it's not inspiring. It's not optimistic. It's not, and nobody wants to hear it. Who the hell wants to be that guy? Who wants to be that guy? I don't want to be known as that guy. And that's my fear right now. I don't want to be known as that guy. But how do I do it, Wendy, without being self-honest about my sentiment? Not necessarily telling people about themselves, but what's separating what's factual and what's true?
Because I think you do it with a good sense of self-awareness. And I think that's the key. I mean, the key to me is the fact that like you said, you're 50 years old and you said, I don't want to become that. So you're always becoming, right? Like when we're always working on what we are becoming, no matter how old we are, we get to take that perspective that we have under our belt and keep becoming better versions of ourselves. And in the end, that's all the world can ask of us. And that's all we can expect of ourselves. But when we give that fight and we succumb to, the victimville of what we've been through, or we, succumb to that addiction or the thing that has brought us down, that's when life gets really sad. Like we can be affected by things, but you're always looking up. You know what I mean? And that you wouldn't have this podcast and be putting the energy that you're putting in if you didn't. So it's just that art of becoming, and you're doing it. So that's why I like talking to you.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I do accept that I'm not being this way because I'm on camera. I'm on camera because I'm this way. Like you said, I shape my personality makes this all possible. But something I didn't realize going into 30 episodes, we're in episode 56 right now. I think Fallon was 55.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that the guest helped me really helped me along the. I mean, it's it's really nothing without the guest. Some people say I talk too much. Jason's like, you need to shut up and let people talk, and I've learned how to do that since our last podcast when everybody's like, shut up and let the girl talk. But then I also people have to realize that it's not an interview. If it's an interview, I wouldn't say anything, and it wouldn't have lasted this
No,
long. A
last
podcast is a
conversation.
conversation. So
Yeah, the conversation is the best.
Yeah.
Like, and I applaud you for it. I really, I like listening to them. I like listening to the guests you have on. Your questions are intelligent, sports or current events. It's all good stuff. So
cool. Well, definitely listen to Fallon for number one, and everybody listening, share this with as many people as you can, because this episode, just like the last episode and the one before that, I think the last 3 or 4 had legs in a different way. Where I'm finally, where my mission statement is to provoke thought and to give people a voice and constantly repose the question. If that's my mission, if that's who I'm supposed to be, let this episode and the last 3 episodes be a reflection, if not a straw person argument, for what I want the Option podcast to be. Before we go, I want you to plug in your website, and I want you to plug in the Optimist Journal for the newbies.
Yeah, so my website is theoptimistjournal.com, and you can find me there. I do optimism and resilience coaching, help people, form their perspective, find the power in their story, build confidence in their voice, all of those things. And I have a book called 365 Days of Optimism. It's just a day-by-day, page-by-page, just training to get your mindset going in the optimist direction. And you can find that on my website. My Instagram is at Optimists Journ. It's JOURN. And you can find me there. I'm posting quotes and just telling you more about my life. So love being a mom to 4 kids, love volleyball, love current events. So really just everything you're talking about, Jason, it's good stuff. So thanks for having me.
No doubt. Hey, okay, listen, Wendy Jones might love you, but for me, I've had it with all of you, all right? For all of you at home, for all of you on your iPad at Starbucks, for all of you on your iPhone at the lunch line listening to this, for all of you on your desktop, who runs the world? Old school. For Wendy Jones, this is episode 56 of the Option Podcast, and I'm Jason DeBitz, and we both say...
Have a good one.
We're out. Come check out the Option Podcast on optionvb.com. It's also available on iTunes and Spotify, and on YouTube under the NY Varsity Sports handle. You're going to love what you hear.